Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with Matt Kelly for another episode of the award winning Compliance Into the Weeds. Today, we're going to continue our exploration of the 2024 update to the evaluation of corporate compliance programs. I take a deep dive into data and data access. Welcome back, Matt.
Hello, Tom. Good to be here.
Matt, I've actually found this part of the 2024 update perhaps the most interesting for a couple of reasons. One is it clearly builds on prior ECCPs and information the Department of Justice has released regarding data and data access. But I'm going to actually start with a question to you, which is, do you think this change came about from either companies who were in front of the Department of Justice who had advanced their data programs demonstrating how compliance had data access, or do you think this is the DOJ recognizing compliance officers are not being given access to data, putting these questions on paper or in print so that compliance officers can take this to senior management and say, this is no longer the gold standard, no longer best practices. This is now table stakes.
That's a good question, Tom. And if I could get away with saying a little bit of both, I'd suspect that's probably it. I am sure there are some businesses out there that have appeared before the Justice Department and have felt the heat and done some quite impressive efforts to get better data analytics for their compliance program. And a lot of that would require the compliance department to be able to tap into other pools of data across the enterprise. That said, I also suspect there are a lot of companies out there that still struggle with this. And perhaps by the end of the resolution, all those companies that are, or the end of the investigation, all those companies I just mentioned, maybe they've built whiz bang stuff. But I suspect a lot of companies at the beginning, they're going to look at their data analytics and be unimpressive to the Justice Department. Or something else I've heard lately, as recently as this afternoon, I was talking with a compliance officer in the banking sector, and he said, here's what happens is that we have a problem. And so then management says, let's invest in strong tech for the compliance team. And they do. And then the problem gets solved. And then management subtly says, let's de-invest in the technology now because we don't have the problem anymore. It's gone away. We don't have to spend. And this banking executive who has been in the field for a while says that happens on a regular basis. And I suspect a lot of other compliance officers outside of banking are probably nodding their heads too. So I do think that this probably is a lot of this is to help compliance officers shove the issue in front of management and the board to say, we cannot ignore this. You all went on the big acquisition spree over the last 6 years. We've got 78 different ERP systems, and me, the lone compliance officer with my team of two, we're supposed to just pull all this data together and come up with a program. We can't. We need to do better. And now look, here is this guidance saying that if we have an issue sometime in the future, data analytics and my access to it, that's going to be a problem. I could see that theory of the case holding a lot of water, that the department is trying to give corporations a kick in the rear that will pass off as a step forward. Okay, fine. I'll take it as a step forward.
Matt, you split, or yeah, I guess split's a fair word, your blog post into several different categories where you posed questions from directly from the ECCP and then answered those, or at least gave us information. And those questions were questions on obstacles to data, questions about resources, and questions about data maintenance. Could you walk us through the questions you saw in the ECCP and how you think a company or a compliance professional should answer them?
Sure. Basically, these new updates include this new section about data access and data resources that comes in the form of 6 questions. Now, the Justice Department, a specific prosecutor would say, I'm not necessarily going to ask you, company, all 6 questions. I might ask one or two or none or all 6. It depends on the facts and circumstances of the case I, the prosecutor, am investigating. However, You, the compliance officer here and now, trying to build an effective compliance program, you do not have the luxury of a fact pattern. You don't know what sort of fact pattern might drag your company in front of the Justice Department sometime in the future. They might ask any of these questions. You will need some sort of ability to answer all of them because you don't know which one is going to actually come up in conversation when the prosecutors are reviewing your program. So I looked at the six, and it was fairly easy to group them into three categories of two questions each. So I'll start with the first two right there that do compliance and control personnel have sufficient direct or indirect access to relevant sources of data to allow for timely and effective monitoring or testing of policies, controls, and transactions? Next question, do any impediments exist that limit or delay access to relevant sources of data? And if so, what is the company doing to address the impediments? So, really, those two questions, I think they're thematically similar, that they are both getting to, does the compliance officer have the ability to actually get to the data? Maybe there are going to be structural impediments. Like I said, you are highly acquisitive, you've got a bunch of legacy ERP software, and the IT systems, the IT team has never stitched all of that together into one single data lake or data pool or whatever we want to call it. So you're stuck with a whole bunch of silos and you're not going to be able to change that. Could there be personnel or cultural impediments, as in senior management isn't really telling anybody, you with the data silo, you must share that data with compliance upon the compliance team's request? Maybe they're not saying that. Maybe they're not communicating the message that compliance matters effectively enough. So that's not a structural problem as much as it is a corporate culture and personnel and leadership problem. Either way, you, the compliance team, you might not necessarily have the ability to get to the data you need. One way that I recommend people would think about these two questions is look at them and then say, okay, so the answer is no, I don't have what the department is looking for, or yes, there are in rise. And it helps you kind of reverse engineer what the problem would be. And then at least you could start to think through, how would we overcome them? Because you could have a really great culture that thinks compliance is awesome and everybody should have access to the data. But if you've got those 32 different ERP software silos and the company has no money to invest in new tech, that's a very different sort of solution you'll need to find or challenge you'll need to overcome than they've got a lot of whiz bang technology and it's all in one single data lake, but compliance is five rungs down the org chart and nobody cares when you call up asking for data. So that's how I would advise you to think through the obstacle questions. I'll stop there. And Tom, I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but it's good, meaty stuff to think about. These two questions are, and I'll just read them off.
Uh,
Do
Absolutely
compliance
agree. And let's
personnel
move on to
have knowledge
resources
of and means
because
to
this is where it
access all
continues to
relevant
get
data
more
sources
interesting
in a
for me.
reasonably timely
What were the
manner?
questions posed and how
Question
would
two,
you help us think through
is the
at
company
least considering
appropriately
these
leveraging
questions?
data analytics tools to create efficiencies in compliance operations and measure the effectiveness of components of the compliance programs? So I viewed those as a bit more about, do you have the actual tools to be able to extract the data? Even if you know where it is in the data lake, even if you know that it's out there in silo number 5 or silo number 26, how would you actually access that? You could, I think, use any number of applications to try and extract the data. The question is whether you
Matt, the second question on the about resources two-parter was the one that really intrigued me. Do you think it is pointing to compliance professionals now have to use data analytics in a much more proactive manner to stop anything from occurring and demonstrate that to a regular should they come knocking, or is it something else? Matt, you've entitled the third section Questions on Data Maintenance, and I found these to be the most highly technical. Indeed, I'm not sure I would know the answer to these. Could you help? I guess if a compliance officer came to you, how might you help him think through these two questions, particularly the second question? And let me focus on the word precision because I have to believe because it's separate from the word accuracy, it means something different than accuracy. But I struggled with the definition of precision in that phrase. I certainly understand accuracy of data, but how do you interpret the word precision, at least in terms of, let me get data analytics models? And if you took a step back and were advising a compliance, a CCO on how to use these questions and this information, how might you suggest they think about talking to their board of directors about data analytics? I hope it's not the sky is falling, chicken little, but do they need to talk and have an honest discussion with the board or senior management about what the DOJ's expectations are now? Matt, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. We're going to link to your blog post in the show notes, and I'm fairly certain we'll be able to revisit this topic down the road.